Chapter 5 Granny Rhoda swung her handbag at the frog girl and cracked her on her forehead. The monster groaned and fell to the ground. Sabrina had seen what sort of stuff the old woman kept in her purse. Everything from spy goggles to rolls of quarters, so she knew it packed quite a wallop. It would take the frog girl a while to get up, if she got up at all. Not wasting any time, the grim woman spun in the opposite direction and raced down the stairs. Elvis followed close behind, clumsily navigating the steep steps and barking threateningly. "If we're lucky," Granny Rhoda said through winded breaths, "that thing will be too afraid of Elvis to come after us." "And if we aren't?" Sabrina asked, as she helped her grandmother down the last of the steps. Unfortunately, the old woman didn't get a chance to respond. The frog girl bounced down the steps and onto a nearby wall, sticking like a suction cup. Elvis stood his ground, baring his teeth at the monster, daring her to come closer. "Your puppy isn't very nice," the frog girl croaked, "but he'll digest in my belly as quickly as the three of you." Daphne stepped forward and flashed her shiny new deputy's badge. "You're under arrest for being gross," she stammered, but the frog girl was not impressed. She lunged for the little girl. Sabrina grabbed her sister's hand and dragged her down the hallway toward the exit. The monster followed by leaping back and forth from wall to wall, gaining ground with each jump. By the time the Grimms reached the exit, the frog girl was right behind them. She shot her thick tongue out and wrapped it around Daphne's arm, dragging the little girl back into her clutches. Elvis leaped viciously at the creature, but it jumped to the ceiling and hung upside down out of his reach. "Let her go!" Sabrina shouted as she desperately reached for her sister. The frog girl let out a sickening giggle and continued to dangle Daphne right above Sabrina's grasp. The little girl struggled and squirmed, and finally reached into her beehive hairdo. She yanked a protractor from her sticky locks and stabbed the frog's tongue with it. The monster shrieked, and Daphne fell, knocking Sabrina to the ground. "And you didn't like my hairdo," Daphne said to her sister as she quickly helped her to her feet, and the two ran to the exit that was with Granny Rhoda and Elvis close behind. "Start the car!" Sabrina shouted as they sprinted across the school lawn. Mr. Canis opened his eyes and, without pausing, climbed off the roof of the car. Within seconds, the old jalopy roared to life, grinding metal on metal and shaking violently. The junker's obnoxious concert had never sounded so good to Sabrina. "What happened?" Mr. Canis asked, as Elvis, Granny, and the girls clambered into the car, but no one got to answer. Something slammed onto the roof. It was so loud they all jumped, except Mr. Canis, whose only reaction was to look up and raise a questioning eyebrow. Just then, a slimy green hand smacked the driver's side window. Sabrina and Daphne screamed. Granny Rhoda whooped in astonishment, and Elvis growled and bared his teeth. But Mr. Canis just took a deep breath, put the car into drive, and floored the gas. The car's tires squealed, and the jalopy rocketed into the street, skidding across the country road before some quick steering set it on the right course. "Oh, I do wish I could drive," Granny Rhoda groaned. "I used to love situations like this." "You know very well the police took your license away," Mr. Canis said, steering from one side of the road to the other in hope of dislodging their stowaway. Unfortunately, nothing the old man did had any effect on the monster, and it continued to beat violently on the roof. "I got a couple of speeding tickets," Granny shrugged. "You were arrested 14 times for reckless endangerment. Several neighborhood groups banned you from driving on their streets. The German government said that if they ever caught you in a car in Berlin again, you would be hanged," the old man corrected. "Oh, Mr. Canis," Granny begged, "no one has to know. Besides, this isn't getting us anywhere." He shook his head. "Please," she pleaded. Mr. Canis slammed his foot on the brake, and the car screeched to a halt. The frog girl tumbled down the hood and bounced along the road for several yards until she stopped. She let out a terrible moan and then lay still. "Let's stay off the major roads," the old man said, opening his door and getting out. Granny squealed with delight and scooted over to the driver's seat. As they switched places, Sabrina watched the grotesque frog girl slowly get to her feet, and stare at the car. Even with her bizarre, twisted face, the murderous rage in her eyes was clear. "Children," Mr. Kenneth said as he turned to face the sisters, "put on your seatbelts." The girls eyed each other nervously and hurried to strap themselves in. Unfortunately, the ancient seatbelts that had been installed in the car were torn, so Mr. Kenneth had used ropes to improvise. Sabrina helped Daphne tie hers into a knot around her waist and then went to work on her own. Just as their ropes were secure, the monster leaped into the air and came down violently on the car's front end. The impact was so great, the car's back end lifted a full 6 feet off the ground and came down violently. The monster leaned forward to get a better look through the windshield and then licked her wide lips. "Going somewhere?" she laughed. Elvis whined and crawled under his blanket as Granny floored the accelerator and the car lunged forward. The monster tumbled over the hood, up the windshield, over the roof, onto the trunk, and fell off the back of the car. "She's gone!" Sabrina cried, just before the freak hopped back onto the trunk and laughed at them through the rear window. "She's back!" Daphne cried, diving under the blanket with Elvis. Granny made a sharp left onto an old dirt road and pressed hard on the gas pedal. The ancient car screamed in protest, but held up its end with a burst of speed so powerful Sabrina felt the G-force pushing her body into the seat springs. Despite the incredible speed, the frog girl held on with little effort and pounded angrily on the rear window. The massive blows caused a thick crack in the glass. "Turning right!" Granny shouted from the driver's seat just before she made the turn. Elvis tumbled over the girls as the car backed to the right, but the maneuver didn't seem to shake the monster. "Turning left!" Granny shouted, and Elvis tumbled to the other side of the car, landing heavily on Sabrina's belly and knocking the wind out of her. The frog girl smacked the window again, and this time it exploded, sending chunks of glass into the back seat. Several large portions of the window stayed attached, but the monster pulled them off effortlessly and tossed them into the road. Sabrina pushed Elvis off of her and fought to fill her empty, burning lungs. As she struggled, the frog girl reached into the back seat with her big, sticky hands, unfastened Daphne's rope belt, and snatched the little girl right out of the seat. Still choking and gasping for air, Sabrina grabbed desperately at Daphne's ankle and tried to pull her back inside the car, but the frog girl's grip was too strong. "She's got Daphne!" she gasped, but Mr. Kenneth had already sprung into action. He rolled down his window and pulled his upper body out of the car. "There's no need to hurry, old man," the frog girl screamed over the window. "You'll die soon enough." A ferocious roar echoed back at the monster, and Sabrina could see her eyes grow wide with surprise. "You're one of us?" the frog girl cried, "and you fight for the life of a filthy grim. You're the traitor. I should have known you by your stink." "Put the child back into the car," Sabrina heard Mr. Kenneth demand, even over the roaring engine. "The traitor gets no favors," the frog girl laughed. She reached into the back seat with a free arm and grasped for Sabrina. Sabrina squirmed and slapped at the disgusting hand, but still managed to snatch her sweater and drag her out the window as well. "I'm not going to tell you again, beast," Mr. Kenneth threatened. "I've heard stories about you, traitor," the monster croaked. "The big bad wolf, trying to make amends for all the bad things he has done. You fair old-timer. Your heart isn't in it, but no matter. I'll give you the dignity of knowing you died trying." Mr. Kenneth was too far away to do anything. Sabrina knew she and her sister were going to survive. They were going to have to save themselves. "Daphne, do you remember Mr. Oberlin?" Sabrina shouted, hoping her sister had not forgotten this particular foster father. "From the Bronx?" the little girl asked. Sabrina nodded. The disgusted look flashing across her sister's face told Sabrina that her plan wasn't the little girl's favorite. Regardless, Daphne nodded, and together the sisters leaned down and bit the frog girl hard. The monster shrieked in agony and let go of Daphne. Sabrina grabbed her sister, and together they scrambled back into the car. The frog girl huddled on the trunk, clutching her wounds. "What happened?" Granny Rhoda said, still pushing hard on the gas. "It appears I am not the only one in our home with fangs," Mr. Kenneth said, climbing back into the car. "You've got to get rid of this thing," Sabrina shouted as she wiped the horrible taste out of her mouth with her shirt sleeve. A bit of the glue was on her chin, and her shirt stuck to it like it was a powerful glue. Daphne was also busy rubbing the monster's taste off her tongue onto her sleeve. Again, the frog girl reached in through the window, but Elvis snapped at her hand, and the monster pulled it back. "Don't worry, Lieblings," Granny said as she made a rough turn onto a gravel road. "I have a plan." Sabrina looked through the windshield and saw a sign blocking the road ahead. It read, "Danger! Bridge unsafe! Go no further!" Worse was what was beyond it. In the distance was an old run-down country bridge covering a rocky stream. One look at it told Sabrina that a mouse wouldn't be able to cross the bridge safely, let alone Granny Rhoda's ancient two-ton monstrosity on wheels. "What's Granny's plan?" Daphne said, smacking at the frog monster's hand as it snatched her through the window. "You don't want to know," Sabrina replied. The car crashed through the old wooden sign and exploded around them. A giant chunk slid over the roof, and by the sound of the pained groan, smacked the monster in her head. The collision was enough to knock the frog girl off the car, and she tumbled painfully to the ground. Unfortunately, Granny didn't stop driving, and when the jalopy raced onto the beginning of the rickety bridge, Sabrina knew they were in trouble. Creaking beams and snapping wood drowned out the car's backfires and grinding gears. The old bridge tilted to the left just as the car reached the halfway point, and she saw a sight that nearly gave her a heart attack. The middle of the bridge had collapsed, leaving a giant hole no one could ever get across, and Granny wasn't slowing down. "Granny, we're not going to make it!" Sabrina shouted, battling the roaring engine to be heard. "I love pancakes too," the old woman shouted back. "I hate this car," Sabrina thought to herself. Granny Rhoda flew the accelerator, the engine screamed, a flame shot out of the car's muffler, and suddenly they were soaring over the gaping hole. They landed hard on the other side and raced onto the road just as the bridge buckled and collapsed into the rocky stream below. After several yards, Granny brought the car to a stop. She shut off the engine. "That took care of the ugly little beast," Granny laughed as she turned around to face the girls. "How exciting was that?" "Were you excited?" "I'm having the time of my life." Everyone remained speechless, except for Elvis, who whined softly. Granny Rhoda didn't notice. She continued to jabber on like a little kid who had had too much sugar before bedtime. "Oh boy, did Froggy get the surprise of her life," she continued, smacking the steering wheel proudly. "You put Rhoda Grim behind the wheel, and things get done." The old woman turned back around and prepared to start the car again, but everyone shouted, "No!" in unison. Mr. Kenneth snatched the keys out of the ignition. Sabrina saw the disappointment in her grandmother's face. The old woman slowly got out of the car, and Mr. Kenneth slid over into the driver's seat. As she got in on the passenger side, Granny Rhoda crossed her arms and pouted. It reminded Sabrina of something Daphne would do. "My driving isn't that bad, is it?" the old woman asked. "Yes!" everyone shouted. Once the house was unlocked, the family staggered inside, with Sabrina quietly cursing one of the worst days of her life. Huck was sprawled across the couch. He had moved the books away from the television and was watching it with the sound of all the way up. The boy was surrounded by 3 delivery pizza boxes, empty bags of chips, a leaky carton of ice cream, and a 2-liter bottle of soda from which he was currently drinking. On his belly was a can of sprayed cheese, and when he saw the family leap into the house, he put down the soda and lifted the cheese can, spraying an enormous